All right, very good. We're now live on YouTube. And before I turn it over to our chair, Jody Sherwood, I just wanted to remind everybody that it's helpful to sort of wave or indicate your interest in talking. We'll work at trying not to all talk over each other all at once and try to call on each other. And Jody and Bevan, if you like for me to do roll call, at the vote for the agenda or intros, I can do that. But if you'd prefer not, that's fine too. And I'll turn it over to you, Jody. Thank you.
Hi, Gretchen. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody to the meeting and thanks for joining. I think, why don't I go ahead and do a roll call, Gretchen, if you could, please.
Of course. Let's see. Chair Jody Sherwood.
Present.
Bevan Clapper, Vice Chair.
Present.
Let's see, I don't see, is Lowell Alec here? Okay, Aaron Hull, member?
Here.
John Michael McDaniel, member? Steve Rice, member?
I'm here.
And Michelle Teed, member?
I'm here.
Great, and then welcome Councillor Vanessa Nordijk. I see on the note you might not be back with us yet. I think she'll join us shortly. Her intern or extern, Maya, I'm worried I'm going to say your name wrong. Would you mind?
Yeah, it's okay. My name is Mai. I'm an extern for Vanessa Nordijk at Salem City Council.
Very good. Thank you. And then City Manager Steve Powers is with us. Mark Weinstein, he joins me in staffing the group. He's with our legal department, and I'm seeing we have guests, applicants to the board. Lisa Nair, here today. Dr. Irvin Brown is here today, an applicant to the board, and Sarah Daly is here today, an applicant to the board.
Yes.
Very good. Did I miss anybody?
I have a Kathy.
Yes. Hi, Gretchen. Kathy Suckle.
Kathy, I'm so sorry. Welcome.
That's
Kathy
okay.
Kathy is also an applicant to the board this evening. Great. Okay. Excellent. Jody, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Gretchen. Thank you all for joining today. Thank you to those with interest in joining the board as well. Glad to see familiar faces from last time. So thanks again. We have our minutes process. So I'm not sure if all the board members had a chance to review the minutes. And so I'll entertain a discussion or a motion to approve those minutes.
I would make a motion.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Bevan, please.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. Motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And for the board members, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes?
Hold on 1 second. Did Lisa Nair have a comment? I saw her waving her, or she was just, okay. Never mind.
And so asking for a vote for the minutes with approval of the minutes for July 14th from the board members. Gretchen, do you want to do roll or do you?
I'm comfortable if people kind of put their thumbs up. Michelle, is it okay with you? I don't see you.
Yep, that's fine. I vote yes.
Okay, great. Looks like we're supported, unanimous.
It's like unanimous.
Got it.
Thank you. Thank you, and that approves the minutes. And then next on the agenda is room for public comment. This is the time for appearance of persons wishing to address the board on any matter other than those which are on the agenda. We do have a 3-minute maximum that we will help you through if anybody does have any comments for the board.
Hey, Chair, this is Vanessa Nordijk. I'm so sorry. I'm arriving from another meeting and I'll be with you in a second. Can anyone hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay, I will be right there because I did want to make a quick couple public comments, but I assume there's some other individuals who are interested as well.
Thank you. And anyone else that's joined us that would like to make comments today? I'm sorry, there are some items in the chat that I haven't been looking at. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I don't see anything related to comment, so I think we're good there.
All right, so it doesn't appear that anybody does. We can come back to,
I'm here now.
aha, I thought maybe you were.
Woo! My goodness, just ran into the door. So, phew. I'm glad I was able to make it just in the time. So,
Yes.
all right. Hi, folks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vanessa Nordyke. I am a Salem City Councilor for Ward 7, which is Southwest Salem. That runs basically from the top of Fairmont Hill down to Illahee, and it runs along into Brown Park. And I served on CPRB many years ago. I have many fond memories from that. We had phenomenal staff support. We had Natasha Zimmerman was our city attorney. She was fantastic. And we really got a great deal of information and insight from the Salem Police Department throughout that process about their perspective and how they see the things, basically the things that they encounter on a daily basis. So I wanted to make a comment today very briefly. I want to be cognizant of the fact that you have a full agenda today, and I want to be mindful of that. And as you are aware, there is going to be a performance audit of the Salem Police Department. And I know that your work on CPRB is extremely important. And I want to encourage you folks to be a part of that process, because I think in your capacity through CPRB, you're a neutral source for folks who come to Salem Police Department with complaints. Any complaints that make it past the internal affairs level, they come to you to be listened, to be seen, to be heard. And I just want to say, number one, I extremely appreciate the fact that you give your time to volunteer for this process, because we cannot do it without you. And secondly, to just recognize that, as I'm sure you're all aware, we're at, I would say, a crossroads for policing around our country right now. I'm sure you saw the recent incidents in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the shooting in Louisiana, and policing is very much under a microscope right now. And so my peers joined me on City Council to call for a performance audit of the Salem Police Department, one that will, like yourselves, have a neutral person or auditing firm that will oversee the process with public input at every step of the way. We believe firmly in transparency and accountability. And I'm very excited about this process. And so I wanted to drop by your meeting today to share that with you, and to also let you know how much I appreciate the work that you're doing, because I think that public safety is a critical piece of our society, and how we treat folks through public safety is of vital importance. So I want to empower you. I want to support you. And I want you guys to be engaged, because I think that change is coming, but it will come through a transparent and a public process. And I want us all to be a part of that. But I want to take a moment to thank Chair Jody Sherwood for your leadership of this committee. Thank you, Gretchen, and for all the other city staff who helped make this committee run smoothly. So I just want to say thank you all for your time. And I look forward to hearing next steps.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Don't know if anyone else had last chance here. Well, not last chance, because we're nicer than that, but anybody else for public comment at this time? Okay, thank you. All right, so consideration request from the city manager, chief of police. And I know, thank you, Steve Powers, for being here today. And I think that you're going to talk to us about the performance audit.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you, board members, for having this meeting. I echo the chairperson's comments and gratitude for your service, and for the applicants' interest and commitment to understanding what they may be getting into on the Community Police Review Board. As Councilor Nordyke said in her comments, council has, as I shared with you, last time I was with you, council has directed a performance audit be done of the police department. And when I met with you last time, I said, with Gretchen's assistance, that we would be back with a more specific request of you regarding your involvement with the review of the police department. The audit will, as the counselor said, I think really help our police department continue to be the police department that is supported by the community, that is responsive to the community, and is doing its work consistent with the values of city council and the community. Thank you, Bevan, for agreeing to serve on the RFP review committee and selecting the firm that will be doing the audit. Thank you, Jody, for your agreement to serve as the chair of the steering committee for the work, an important part of that community touch point that Councilor Nordyke mentioned. The board plays an important role currently in ensuring accountability between the community and the police department, and this audit will, I think, continue that important function of the board, and that necessity of having a police department that is accountable to the community. I would like to give a kind of an overview and then come back to some of the specific opportunities and specific requests from me regarding your involvement. I would ask the board to be open to, and I know you will be open to receiving and reviewing the recommendations from the auditor for new ways of perhaps structuring our community police relationship, including the Community Police Review Board. So I would welcome perhaps tonight or certainly as the audit is underway and we have some preliminary work from the audit, welcome your thoughts and ask for your ideas for possible change. And also, again, we could talk about this more specifically too, ask for your help in spreading the word in the community that the board is a resource, that the audit is underway, help the community understand your role in that accountability relationship. And how can the city help you? How can our staff help you spread the word about the important work that you do? The city has received 9 proposals. Our project timeline is for a notice to proceed, that the city has a very formal purchasing and contracting process, and we issue a notice to proceed before any work of this magnitude is started. And right now, the schedule for that notice to proceed is September 14th. The advisory group, the steering committee, would meet within a week of that notice, depending upon the scheduling of the auditing firm. A progress report would be provided to council, and through council, the public, later in September. In Councilor Nordyke's discussion and motion with her peers on council, she made the great point of we need findings, we need work in time to have any change that council, that we believe is important to make, that it be done in time for the upcoming budget. So we've built in a preliminary findings point in the process. That would be in December. So then council staff would have the opportunity to consider prior to our next year's budget. We're in a July-June fiscal year. We'd have some preliminary results, at least preliminary findings on what might need to be included in next year's budget. In February, that's the time frame for providing preliminary findings and recommendations to the community and to groups for input. And the final recommendations would be presented in March of 2021. I know several of you are familiar with performance audits. Perhaps though you're not all familiar with performance audits, I'd like to give a quick overview of what a performance audit is. Councilor Nordyke, mentioned it's going to be a firm, or it is going to be someone or somebody's separate from the city. It's an independent assessment of an operation, in this case, a police department, a police operation, and is a method of evaluating program or programs, and in this case, it will be more than one police program, to determine effectiveness against, again, adopted policies, city code, state law, and best practices. The audit will include recommendations for change. And again, those changes, at least a preliminary preliminary results will be available for consideration if resources are necessary. And that review to determine effectiveness and recommend changes is really why City Council, I believe, directed a performance audit be done. It is done independently of an organization's management and governing body. There are some touch points. The steering committee, the reports out, the opportunity for feedback to the auditor, but it's not guided or directed in any way by me or the police chief or city council. It is an independent assessment. The assessment will be the performance auditors, not the cities. It was important that, and I think the number, I've not seen the proposals, but the number would indicate that I think we were successful in having the work done by an organization, a firm with expertise in policing. As the councilor mentioned, policing in the country is going through some dramatic and rapid change, and to have expertise in that area is really critical in providing a performance audit that will be current as well as not reactive. That will be based again upon best practices and good solid information, as well as that community engagement. The audit is not a financial audit. You may be familiar with audits done of a company or business's finances. The city has an annual financial audit that's required in statute for local governments. This is not an audit of the department's finances. This is an audit of the department's performance. There is a financial aspect to it, and that is the department's current capacity. And again, that's why the timing with the budget was so important, because it does have to be considered within the context of available resources for the department. There were areas of emphasis that were included in the request for proposals. The department's interactions with unsheltered individuals, interactions with individuals experiencing behavioral health crisis. It was important for council, and there's going to be a work session next month on the department's, the city's response to non-criminal behaviors. And those two populations are frequently where in Salem and in other communities where a police response is often the only or first response that a community can provide to behaviors of unsheltered individuals or behaviors of individuals experiencing behavioral health crisis. Engagement with the community is another area of focus, with particular attention to BIPOC populations. The department's response to assemblies, demonstrations, protests, and crowds. the department capacity that I mentioned earlier. Use of force, while I believe, and perhaps some experienced members of this board would concur that while I know the department's use of force is very, very solid, it's such an critically important area that we need to make sure it's the best that it possibly can be. And then officer accountability, and this is, as current board members know, this is really, it might be a cliche, but I think it's truly a partnership between the community and the officers, and you serve a very important pivot point between those two. And the audit does have an item of focus of officer accountability. As the counselor said, certainly the transparency, the sharing of recommendations, the sharing of preliminary recommendations and findings is really going to be a critical part of this process. And it really is, in my view, an important project, an important process to, again, make sure that the department's policies and tactics align with city council and community values and expectations. Are those aligned currently? I think this audit will help us find out. Community policing is a word that's thrown around a lot. What is our department's true capacity for engagement with the community? I think this audit will help us find that out. Officers must have confidence in the integrity and competence of their colleagues. Officer accountability is essential to maintaining public trust. Review and adjudication processes must be fair to the police officers, as well as, accountable to the community. Again, you play a key role in that. How effective are the police department and city systems, policies, and procedures for officer accountability? The counselor mentioned, briefly some of the methods that will be used. We're going to make documents available. This project has the support of the police department, of the police union. We're going to make information available to the auditing firm. We're going to make available to the firm proceedings of this board. The auditor will help us determine how Salem is doing compared to the best practices in the country. However, I believe strongly that what Salem does has to make sense for Salem, and I think the audit will help us in that regard. We are going to, and this may change because the audit is being done by an independent, professional, knowledgeable firm, but we have suggested in the RFP that comparably sized cities, capital cities, because capital cities tend to draw, not exclusively, of course, but do tend to draw more protests and demonstrations and assemblies than perhaps a non-capital city of a comparable size. We're also in those focus areas asking not only for findings on our capacity, but also particularly for the unsheltered individuals and behavioral health response. What is our community capacity? The process will include community interviews with community leaders, potential partners, to explore impacts and outcomes of programs and practices and our community capacity to achieve those recommendations, help us identify gaps. And the scope of work does include the auditing firm reporting out to the community. It won't be a report that's delivered to me or the police chief or city council and the auditor leaves town. We have asked that they include in their proposal how they would report out to the community, both the, as I mentioned, the preliminary findings as well as the final recommendation. So that's what will be started, and we, the council, Gretchen and me, we do really value and want the board's involvement beyond the individual involvement of your chair and vice chair. And I would welcome either tonight or at a future meeting, some discussion, recommendations, ideas on the community engagement, on ideas for the accountability, and really any other feedback, input that you would have at this time. So Gretchen, was there anything that you would add before I be quiet and listen?
Thank you. No, I think I might clarify that I'm imagining, although we don't have this lined out in a schedule yet, that there could be some touch points as the audit does their preliminary findings, where we'll have topics to bring to this board to gain input along the way. That's one way I'm imagining that'll be possible to work as we get into it a little bit more closely. I'm imagining that as a way that it could function practically. But no, I don't have anything to add, and echo the appreciation for everyone to be ready, both in case we get a case review if somebody's complaint is unresolved at the department and needs to come to us, and then also for this level of conversation that Steve has talked about tonight. Thank you.
I have a question. It's Erin. Maybe I missed it or something, but when will it start? When will the audit start? I don't know if I missed that.
Our schedule is for it to begin on the notice to proceed would be issued mid-September. Kickoff meeting is scheduled, the project timeline for the week of September 21st.
Okay, so September. Okay, thank you.
Aaron, I wanted to real quickly just thank very much Steve for being here tonight to explain the process, and it's great to see it up and running so quickly from the last time that we got together. I saw a couple hands up, but I wanted to introduce John Michael McDaniel, who I haven't met yet, but it's good to see you. Our newest board member has joined, so I just wanted to make sure folks knew that he was here with us today. So thank you, John Michael, appreciate that.
Hello, everyone, and sorry, my emails from Gretchen keep going to trash, and I swear it's not on purpose, but I finally found it and was able to join, so I apologize for being late.
Glad you're here. And Steve, I saw your cat trying to get in there too, so. Counselor.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted to add a quick comment about body cams and dash cams. It is my hope that that will be one of the areas that will be explored as part of the audit. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that specifically because we as a city council have been getting a lot of folks who are interested in dash cams and body cams. And that to me makes perfect sense to roll into a performance audit as part of an overall programmatic review of our police. So I just want to make sure that I mention that because that's been a very much a hot topic in this community and around the country in terms of engaging policing. But other than that, I just want to underscore the fact that I really look forward to CPRB's engagement in this process. I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that my extern has done some incredible research already in her own right as a law student about not only about how community police review boards are done, but also how this community police review board operates. And I think that along the way, there'll be opportunities for input and engagement. I look forward to those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bevan, I saw you had your hand up, and I wanted to thank you too for your extra work that I know that you've given to preparing for this audit. So thank you so much on behalf of the board.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment that I was part of the pool that reviewed the 9 applications, and as a professional performance auditor, I found that there were some really qualified candidates in there, and I was really impressed with the pool that we were able to get. So we're going through the process. I think we're gonna meet, to ask a few more questions to a few more people, but I think that at the end of it, we're gonna end up with some really good firm to do this work.
Oh, that's excellent. to
And then I
hear.
did have a question for the city manager. So in the last couple of years, we've made some requests as the Community Police Review Board to the Department for data, policies, information about the performance of the department. And I just wanted to set expectations. If some of those requests might need to wait until after the audit, they may be better informed at that time, from the recommendations and findings that come through the audit. But I also just wanted to understand, the capacity of the police department. Would they be able to continue to work on those requests? Were those requests being worked on? And maybe you could, and maybe this, Gretchen, you need to get, back with the police department about that. Just help me set my expectations about when, those requests would be responded to.
Steve, I don't mean to speak for you, and so maybe I'll make a comment, but then jump in. That actually gets me to item number 6 on the agenda. Speaking of basically coordinating the information requests that have come from this board over the past bit of time with the ones that they're also currently preparing, like for the upcoming counselor work session, so in short, yeah, I actually do not tonight, I'm looking for my notes. The questions that were posed at the last meeting, as an example, are currently with the department leadership, and they're working through those. Some of those things they're preparing as a part of the audit process already. And we want to make sure that they're giving complete information and be consistent and accurate with that. I had brought them several questions from your last meeting, including data about non-criminal interactions, the overall data requests that we were carrying forward from previous meetings, clarifications on no-knock policies, how we serve people who are hard of hearing or deaf, and generally service to people with disabilities. And if it's possible for someone to be available in lieu of ride-alongs for Q&A sessions and those kinds of things. Those questions are with the department leadership right now. And in some cases, like you said, they're preparing towards the counselor work session. So in some cases, we might be experiencing more delay. So I don't know if I have a complete answer to your question. I think it's going to depend on the type of question. In this case here, I don't have the updates for you tonight, but I hope to shortly and before your next meeting, but I don't have a firm timeline on it.
If I may, Chairperson, while requests from advisory boards are important, and we do our best to be responsive, there is a heightened responsiveness when the direction is from City Council. So the performance audit is moving with urgency. Certainly, if there are areas of overlap between the Community Police Review Board's requests and the scope of the audit, there could be some certainly sharing and responsiveness in that regard. And also, I think as you have opportunities to interact with the auditor, certainly the board sharing its experiences with the department, with the city organization will be valuable. If we have missed the mark on providing you with information to help you do your work, that would be a finding certainly for the audit. And I do know you have one of the best, if not the best, city employees helping you in Gretchen, and you can believe what she says. And we'll do our best to be responsive to you, as well as being responsive to the other information needs that have really have increased over the past few months.
Yeah, I'd sent a email about a year ago with a list of potential data points or metrics, or basically any data about the department. We read some data at one point, but there wasn't comparative data available, just to understand, how the department's working. And so, I would just like to say that we could maybe pause on some of those requests, at least the ones coming from me, until we get more information from the audit. I just don't want to overwhelm, the department and have them responding. Like you said, Gretchen, I think it's really important that they do this thoughtfully. Now that we're kind of getting some more professionalized from this firm on it. So I don't know, that was more of my question, was just trying to make sure that there wasn't all sorts of different requests coming through. And if we could pause on some of those data requests until we get the audit, or if it just made sense that they were already preparing that stuff, that it was ready. That was kind of just where I wanted to set, understand, so I could set my expectation there. So if you can just if they were already working on it, because, the request had been out there for a year, we would still love, I would still love to see it. But if not, I'm 100% okay waiting till we get more information from the audit, because we don't want them spending time, figuring out numbers that in 6 months weren't going to make sense when we learn what we learn. So.
Thank you, Bevan. I appreciate that graciousness. And yeah, in to a degree, they were already working on stuff, and then now they're pivoting, and I should have a bit more detail soon and be able to respond more precisely after I hear back from the department. But thanks for that flexibility and graciousness.
Yeah, once again, Bevan, thanks for agreeing to be on that committee to help in that vein as well. So, Erin.
Oh, sorry. I know we talked about this, well, and Gretchen just talked about it too, about not because we can't do the ride-alongs right now, and having someone on the board talk to a police officer or whatever that looks like. I'm not quite sure. But I would really, and I don't know if I said this last time, but I would really like to be one of those people to have a chance to talk. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Got it. I got it noted.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the city manager about the performance audit? I think it's just around the corner. We'll be hearing more. Sure appreciate everybody coming together for this meeting so that we could hear more about it. But is there anything anyone's thought about since? And I'll open that to our guests too, if you don't mind. Michelle, as board member, I wanted to recognize, I thought I saw your light kind of come on here. I know you're on the phone, a little harder to join us.
Yes, thank you. I didn't have any questions. I just want to thank the city manager for the information. I appreciate it.
I don't see any other questions. I'm curious myself, has this happened before in the past for the city, this type of an audit that you're aware of?
I will be with the city for 5 years in November, and in my time, certainly nothing of this scope or magnitude. Performance audits, as several of you know, do have its own discipline, its own set of protocols and procedures, and its own rigor We do, though, use other methods of evaluating performance, of critiquing performance, of learning. Perhaps not as rigorous as a full performance audit, but we have used after action reports. So but in my 5 years, this is the first that I've been part of. I don't know, Gretchen's been with the city longer. I don't know if she can think of any.
I also cannot. I'm not aware of another project of this type. I know that the Salem Police Department is what's called an accredited department, and that includes a process where every 3 years they go through the policies with an accrediting body, and they need to talk about and show their policies as well as examples of how those policies have been carried out in practice. So they go through that accrediting process, but that's different than the performance audit. So I too can't think of another time when, but I've been with the city about 7.5 years, so not that much longer than Steve.
Okay. Thank you both. I appreciated what you had to say, Steve, about how this has to make sense for Salem. There's a lot of influence of other areas of things that are happening and going on, and everyone has their challenge in their communities today. So I appreciate hearing you say that. I'm curious if there's been a conversation, and maybe this will come out of the audit, of this type of performance review over time in the future, that we, are always challenging ourselves to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. And I was curious if this will become more part of the fabric of the city, or is that still yet to be determined?
It could certainly be the first of a continual, emphasis on performance auditing. I'd like to see how this one goes.
Of course.
Can I make a comment as a performance auditor? So normally once you get your recommendations, you can set what is called a follow-up schedule, where you would either have auditors come in, or the auditors help you find metrics that would indicate how you're doing towards, implementing those recommendations. So normally that would be a part, and that might be something that the steering committee might want to consider and talk to the auditors about, is what they would think a timeline for implementation or follow-up would look like. I'll also throw it out there that some other cities of Salem size have an auditor that is part of the city staff, an independent audit shop. So I believe that was brought up in some budget discussions maybe last round or a few years ago. So it may be something that for the community to look at as to whether they would like to have their own independent audit function within the city government. So
then, thank you, Bevan. That means there's an auditor today inside the department for other reasons, or maybe serving the city as a whole? Curious.
No, I don't think the city of Salem's ever had a audit shop.
Okay.
Beyond
law
somebody else could correct me on that, but I just don't think it's ever been set up.
The metrics is a great suggestion, because we do have an initiative underway to establish what we call key performance indicators for all departments. So that input, that validation of metrics or key performance indicators through the performance audit for the police department would be really, really helpful for that ongoing measurement and reporting out to the community.
And raise another question for me related to accreditation. Is it that will, if that serves us the way that we had hoped to, the accreditation process, that's lengthy and time-consuming staff. Was a review of that accreditation process part of it?
Jody, I think you were cutting out a little bit. I want to rephrase your question and see if everyone can hear. I think I'm hearing you say, was the, gosh, I lost my train of thought. Was the performance?
It is the data part of the performance
Oh,
audit.
is
just
the
to see if
accrediting
it's-
process part of the performance audit? Is that?
Yes.
It's not a specific task within the scope of work within the RFP. However, if once the firm is selected and they get going and have that interaction with the oversight committee, it's determined that that would be a valuable review. I would certainly support the flexibility for the auditor to do the work that would be valuable while they're here on site. The one constraint, would be the available budget for the project.
What is the budget for the project?
I think we have $175,000 set aside for the work.
And then Dr. asking if there is an equity lens in using and or choosing the performance audit.
I would need to go back and look at the document to be able to answer that question more precisely, which I could do. It would just take me a bit to see what was included in the precise piece, or Bevan may have input being on the committee.
Yeah, it was not one of the scored in the proposals. I don't believe it was part of the scored, but it was discussed as the group, and through the best practices work, one of the things we're really looking for, and one of the questions we're following up on is related to how they're going to implement emerging best practices. And so I think one of the challenges is going to be looking at the criteria and the best practices that they're judging the department against in a modern lens, because some of those best practices might be, 5-10 years old. So that's really critical with this audit, and that's what we're looking at. And so in that, I know that I'm looking at it from the standpoint of having a modern, modern by meaning taking into account events in the last 6 months to a year of where emerging best practices from a community expectation standpoint are.
And so just to further clarification, does best practices or modern practices, does it include leading the conversation with race?
We are asking the firm's those questions of the firm next week, and I will use that phrase.
Got it. Got it. And Bev, I appreciate you giving me clarification on it. The reason I ask is because when we look at, obviously, the city of Portland, and obviously there's a huge spotlight on the city of Portland, but a lot of their conversations in regards to independent meetings and also the meetings within, the equity conversations, their policies always include leading a conversation with race, because we know it's uncomfortable, but yet we also want to, not include it. We want that to be a part of the conversation. So that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, we have 3 kind of questions we're following up on. One was sort of addressing how do we make sure those best practices are matching the community's expectations, our community's expectations, Salem's community's expectations, because sometimes best practices get a little stale, right? Because they can be older. And then the other questions have to do with regional. I actually learned a lot from the city attorney who attended the meeting about the Ninth Circuit Court, and they have some differences in interpretations of how things can apply. And so we want to make sure that the firm that we're working with understands those nuances, because we did get a lot of national firms, which was great. But we want to make sure that they understand the Ninth Circuit Court. And then there was a third question on audit practices. So there's different standards that audits are held to. In my work, I follow Red Book standards, but those are more private sector standards, even though I adapt them for government. So we're having more questions about what specifically the standards that they're going to follow, and then their standards for documentation.
Got it.
So those are sort of our follow-up questions for, to get more information and hear from them how they're going to address those. So thank you for your input, and I will make sure that we, it's very clear that how are those best practices going to lead the conversation on race.
Right. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think it was earlier, I think it was the council person, she had mentioned the conversation by stating what recently happened in Wisconsin with Mr. Jacob Blake, I believe. And so if we're going to have those types of conversations, it's really hard to eliminate not including race, gender, poverty, and everything else, but definitely leading with race. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for your questions. John Michael, could you? Yes, please.
Yeah, forgive me for not knowing, but what organization is Salem Police currently accredited through?
I don't know the answer to that either. I'm sorry. I can find out, but I don't remember and don't have it offhand. I can find out and let you know, unless somebody else here knows.
Thank you, Gretchen. And in the chat, thank you again to Dr. Brown for the questions. All right. Is there any other business for the board? I noticed we don't have police members again today, but I know that this was also a focus on the performance audit. Please, Gretchen.
I can clarify that, and I remember that came up last time. You might notice in our template in our staffing plan, the police don't actually directly staff the Community Police Review Board as part of that intent to neutrally provide support and for the staffing to come out of the manager's office. So the police department attend when there's a training that we've asked them to provide, or if there's a case review that they're supposed to be making comment on. We've not had them come when they don't have some sort of role on the agenda. So that's why they didn't come in July, because we didn't end up actually having a specific spot for them. And then again tonight, certainly as we build the agenda for the next meeting, if they're going to be reporting out on some of our pending questions, or if there's a training that you all would like to request that they provide, then we'll get them here for sure. I also can just provide by way of update, Internal Affairs Sergeant Smith is looking to retire at the end of the calendar year. And so they're appointing a new sergeant to work in that role. And so we'll be meeting a new sergeant that works with internal affairs and welcoming a new person to assist us with that.
Can I make a comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
It was asked of what some of our input might be. So one of the things that I've had concern with is that it appears that the practice at the Salem Police Department is that the internal affairs sergeant is a rotation for a certain amount of time. And as a performance auditor, independence when you're adjudicating or, when you're, doing your work is so vitally important. And it might, if you're looking at that transition before the end of the audit, it might be something, Jody, for the steering committee to get early information on, if that is a best practice to have the internal affairs person be a rotation where, in this case, he's retiring, but potentially he would have, he or she would have to go, or they would have to go back into the ranks with people that they had, done internal affairs investigations on. So with that new timing, that might be something that we want to front load to understand in case there's a shift that may need to happen there, or not, if that, whatever the auditor, the information that comes up says. But to me as an auditor, it's just slightly concerning to, to not be able to have that independence built in.
Thank you. Any other comments? I meant to look, Gretchen, our next meeting is October 13th. I'm actually surprised to hear you say that the law enforcement actually comes when we request, because I can't remember a time that we've never, that they've not attended except for the last two. And so that's interesting to me. I think it's interesting to note for as we start looking at our group to see if this is the right setup, right practice for the city. Are we serving in the best way that we possibly can to have volunteers? And that relationship building is really important. So it's just a little bit of a surprise to me. I would have thought that we would have had a recap of complaints that have come in the last time that's occurred in the last few months. Perhaps we can talk about that before October, although I know that we'll be in the middle of perhaps change. So I just wanted to voice that might be something we want to think about for October in the lens of everything else going on. So, board member comments. Anything from any of the other board members? Do you anticipate, Gretchen, that the group will need to meet again before the 13th of October? Is there any preparation we should be thinking about? I know that there will be another body of work going on that we can report in, but.
Not that I can see at this time. I think between now and October 13th, the performance auditor will have been selected through the work that Bevan's participating in, and then the first steering committee group that you'll be leading will have met. And so I think we'll be timed to be able to receive an update on how that went. And there might be questions queued up to bring to this board for consideration. So unless we get a case review, or if anyone's thinking about it differently, I don't see it yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So any other board comments before we move on to unfinished business? Seeing none, Michelle, I want to give you the opportunity. Yay or nay?
Sorry, nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, and so we'll move on to unfinished business and the pending questions. I know that you covered that. Gretchen, any last?
No, I have nothing else to add on that.
Bevan, anything else for you to cover there? Michelle, sorry, you're just lighting up. I just want to make sure I'm not.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
You only knew you were lighting up, right? And then there's no review hearings is on our agenda as well. Okay. Well, I think that we've come to the end of our meeting time. Thank you so much, Counselor, for joining us, Steve for explaining to us, Mark for joining us from Montana. Heaven's sakes, that's an extra work effort there, that's for sure. And then again to our guests for joining us today. Much appreciated the conversation.
Would you like?
Thank you for
Would you
having
like
us.
to
We
make a
appreciate it.
motion?
Thank you. Thank you. Bevan,
Make
I
a
think
motion to close?
I think you were saying, let's make a motion to close. Yes, please. I think that would be great.
Right? I think we make motions to close, right?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to, close the meeting.
All those in favor, board members, thumbs up.
Aye.
Michelle, light up. And I suppose we should do the proper thing and introduce ourselves to John Michael. If board members, before we close the meeting, which maybe isn't fair of me to just do this, but I realize that you might not know exactly our faces to our names, so we should probably go around the room. Obviously, I'm Jody Sherwood and I'm from West Salem. And Erin, I'll let you go next.
Oh, I'm Erin, and I'm actually from West Salem too.
Ah, I could see you out the window. No, not really.
Right? Hi. No.
Bevan
Bevan, I live in South Salem.
and Steve. West Salem
Well,
too.
I am now in West Salem too, and I live at Capitol Manor.
And Michelle on the phone.
Hi there. My name's Michelle Teed. I live in North Salem.
And John Michael, how about you? What area do you represent?
I am in South Salem.
Very good.
It's nice to meet you all virtually.
Great to meet you. And I know that we'll be talking to Gretchen about an opening or two that we might have. So we'll talk some more about that for the folks interested as well. So back to the motion on the table. And I probably did that all incorrectly, and I'm sorry. I just
I think we need a
want to
second.
miss the opportunity. So do we have a second to adjourn our meeting today? Was that Aaron?
Yeah,
And then all of the board members in favor. There we are. Thank you all very
Aye.
much.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Gretchen?
Yeah, just one moment. I'm going to stop the live